Now more of the Midcoast Morning Buzz with Richard and Jim. Radio 9, WCME.
Well, Jim, our guest this morning is an old friend of yours.
Yes.
Tom Pagnotti. He's the host of So You Think You Know Bath, the 7th edition. It's a local game show about living in and loving Bath with both arms. That's going to come up a week from tonight on March the 22nd at Winter Street Center, and it's all to benefit our good friends down at Main Street, Bath. Tom, thanks for coming in. It's so funny because I've never met you before.
No.
I know of you, but in 5 minutes between the three of us talking, we have worked with
We know
everybody.
1,000 people together.
So it just shows you how incestuous this
That's
business
right.
is.
And it's getting smaller.
And what did you mean by old friend exactly?
Well, you know, that relates to something I was going to say. And Tom probably doesn't want me to say this, but at some point we have to be truthful. At least once in a while.
I can start. We worked together before we had gray hair.
Yeah.
You were my news person in Springfield, Massachusetts.
And Tom was actually my boss. I reminded you of that. You forgot about it.
I tried to forget.
That's not to say he actually has to take responsibility for hiring me, because this was an oddly structured station. He was my boss, but I don't think he actually hired me.
No,
but he might have said, something like, "It's okay. We can let him work here."
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, Jim, is that Tom has the voice that we can only dream of having. Tom's voice is on God's answering machine.
Yeah.
Right? So, what's funny is that, here we are. Here's the three of us in this independent radio station in beautiful Midcoast, Maine. What goes around comes around. I think we all did something right to all be here together today.
Well, and the fact that, this is where I started in a situation like this. I started at WFTN Radio in Franklin, New Hampshire.
Which is still going.
And I was thrilled to make $110. No, I think I made $97 a week. And I got a raise to 110. I thought I was the richest guy in the Lakes region. But that's the way it worked at that time.
My first job, and I was very lucky. This station in the Midwest in Iowa just had a pay scale that was traditionally higher than many of its competitors. I made $140 a week on my first job, and everybody thought I was rich. I even thought I was rich.
Oh, it's funny. It's funny. Tom, tell us about So You Think You Know Bath. What's that all about? This is your 7th go-around on this?
Yeah, and, it's funny that they didn't run me out of town on a rail after the first show. But, what amazes me is that I'm hosting a show about Bath history and, everyday occurrences in Bath, and I'm from away. And there's only two reasons.
Who isn't?
It's true.
But
two reasons, though. I figure
you're northern New England native.
But I'm still from away.
Okay, I know.
And I figure I got the gig because I have a larynx and I can read just about anything. So we're 7 years into this. It's a game show about living in and loving Bath, and it's not necessarily just a history lesson about Bath, though there is a little bit of that too. It's also observational questions. There'll be 3 rounds, 20 questions each, and man, it moves fast. We'll get you in there. We start the show at 6:30, 6 o'clock cocktails, 6:30 the show starts. We'll have you out by 9 so you can get downtown and have a good meal in one of the restaurants there.
Are there prizes to be awarded here?
Yeah, this year actually some really cool prizes. Dinner at the Admiral Steakhouse and tickets to your show of your choice at the Chocolate Church. So. Yeah, it's actually
a great venue.
Yeah.
I am so glad. I live in Bath, and one of the reasons I'm very happy to live in Bath is the presence of the Chocolate Church. Yeah. And, of course, the fact that you're a neighbor 2 blocks away.
Well, I don't know how that worked out. As it turns out, Jim has stalked me for the past 30 years. He turns up in Denver, he turned up in Buffalo, and then in Washington. And now he's living 2 blocks from me. I'm sorry I told him where I lived.
We didn't really establish this. We haven't talked about this, but this is kind of worth going over. I first met Tom Pagnotti. I had heard of him, but I think we first met in 81 or 82. Yeah. We worked together in Springfield, Massachusetts. We talked about that a moment ago, but we didn't say the location. And then Tom has stars in his eyes, and everybody knows Tom is going to, at some point, leave Springfield, Mass. For bigger things. We don't know where he's going. He winds up doing the midday show at a station that still today is very much a powerhouse in Buffalo, New York, known as WBEN. Sure. And by the way, you worked at WBEN with a New England radio legend, Jefferson K, who just recently passed away.
He was the greatest.
Yeah.
Talk about a voice. Oh, man.
Yes.
He made me sound like a tenor.
Jeff Kay did mornings at WBEN in the 80s. Tom followed him middays, and Jeff Kay in intervening years has been the man who never says his name on all the NFL films,
Right.
which you see on television and in highlight form and things like that. But anyway, so then Tom goes to Buffalo. I get a job a year later doing news at the head-on competitor for Tom's station. As a result, we don't see too much of each other in Buffalo. And Tom's station eventually won the battle of those two competitors.
Kicked your butt pretty good.
We did. You did. You did. And I left Buffalo and went other places. And then I kept track of Tom. I knew that he had gone out to Denver for a while at another station that was just basically owned Denver for many years, called KHOW or KHOW. And I'm aware that Tom is out there, but I'm here on the East Coast, so I don't hear Tom, and that was the days before internet radio and stuff like that. But I do love the Front Range of Colorado and Denver, and I vacation out there from time to time. And one day I just happened to fly out to Denver and check into a motel, and I'm zonked, and I sleep late the next morning, and a clock radio in the motel room goes off because somebody else had said it there, and who do I hear but Tom Pagnotti, known in those days by your alter ego. Tell the people what they have. Tom Kelly
was my name. And boy, was my mother furious. Because I was named at my very first, they said, well, you can't use Pagnotti because it sounds too ethnic. I'm like, all right, well, what would you like me to call myself? So they said, well, how about Tom Patterson? So we tried that for a day, and Tom would come out and would be followed by Agnotti.
Yeah.
So they said, okay, this isn't going to work. Why don't you, now you're Tom Kelly. I thought, oh, okay, fine. And I went home and I announced that to my mother, and she was mad. She was angry. Well, I'll tell people that you're my son, and how are they going to know you have a different name?
You made a whole bunch of Irish friends when you did that.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so how long were you in Denver?
I don't know, 8 or 9 years.
Yeah, quite a while.
But I spent, this is the cool thing for me anyway, and especially in this industry and at that time. I spent half of my on-air career at the same radio station in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
And I thought I would retire. And as it turns out, I did. They retired me.
Yeah, but you went on to other things. And tell us the story. You told me once, but I've forgotten the details of how you came to make Bath your home, which it has been for the last 7 years?
7 years.
Yes.
We were in Washington, D.C., and I met Peter Call and his partner in Washington. They eventually moved to Bath because they just thought it was such a great community. Now, Peter happens to be the principal at Morse High School. And we came up here for a vacation, fell in love with it, and when things fell apart in Washington or came to an end, we said, what do we want to do? Now that I've grown up, what can I do for a living? And I still had no clue, really, when we moved up here. I thought I might do radio or television. And as it turns out, I do, but not on a day-to-day basis.
We're going to talk about that.
And we turn up here in Bath, and I almost immediately was involved in the community, as obvious by the fact that this is the 7th year that I'm hosting, so you think you know Bath.
I want to say I did not, although I was up here last year when you did it, I did not have an opportunity to attend, but everywhere I go, and this is not flattery here, this is true. Everywhere I go in Bath, people say this is a great show. You got it. Tom's great hosting it. He's a natural for hosting it. You got to get to this thing. So I will be there next Friday night. But one thing that I think is very significant, Tom, you are running a substantial small business in Bath that is really basically invisible.
Yeah.
You don't have any sign out. You do it from your home.
I do it at the second floor of my home.
So explain exactly what you do.
To say I'm in voiceover would be kind of a broad way to go about it, but I'm primarily what's called a TV news promo voice and a radio imaging voice. In other words, I'm the signature voice that a radio station would hire as their voice.
Are you listening, Jim?
So,
very close.
Well, I've got contracts in Portland, so I won't be on WCME, but for the occasional appearance like this. But in other words, I'm the guy that says, tonight at 5 on 9 News.
Yes.
Rhea Blakely has details on, and that's what I try to scare people into doing the news.
Yeah.
So.
And you do this for radio and television stations all over the country.
I'm on over 100 radio and TV stations in the country.
You're on a big station that covers virtually all of New Jersey, and the only station in New Jersey with a statewide signal called New Jersey 101.5.
I was very lucky to get that account, because people in New York and people in Philadelphia are hearing you. And it was a great situation for me. And I love working with those folks because they're great.
Tom, I'm serious about this. Now, there are kids out there that are listening to this show, by the thousands, I'm sure, that are huddled around the radio, and they want to know, how do I get into radio? How do I do this? How do I get a job like this guy? How do you do it? I remember the old days, you just knocked on a door. You did a little air check tape on a cassette, and you went in and you did that. You knocked around in the smaller stations. But how do you do this?
Persistence.
Yeah.
It also helps to have been quite unpopular in high school, I think.
And again, here's the three of us, right, sitting here.
Well, there's a lot of truth to that. A lot of the wit from that was used on the radio came from self-defense.
Yeah.
When I was bullied as a kid.
Yeah.
So anyway, let me get back to the So You Think You Know Bath. Tickets are $35.
Yeah.
And they're available all up and down Front Street at Now You're Cooking, Ornament, Brick Store Antiques, and for that matter at the Main Street Bath office, which is at that fabulously renovated train station. There's some great local food with your ticket price, a cash bar, and I think you're going to have fun. And by the way, the president of Main Street Bath, Brian Hatch, is my co-host, and he's a scream.
Without giving away some of the pertinent questions, the big prize winners, what can people expect? What kind of trivia are you talking about?
There may be a historical question about, where was Maine's first ship built? And I'm just making this stuff up as we go. To me, the most fun are the observational questions. For example, on the screen, you'll see 3 street signs or 4 street signs, and the question will be, which does not intersect with Washington Street?
Yeah.
We've got one question this year where you have to put streets in order as they appear north to south.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so some of the questions are not all that easy.
They're not puffballs by any means.
And I'll tell you, the Saginaw Hawk Preservation Team this year, I think, is going to be hard to beat. People that know and love this town, but we field some really great contestants, people that really love the city and really know the city. And then we trip them up with trick questions about, which street runs in which direction. So.
Now, I understand. Perhaps I should take this up with you off the air, but it's so much fun to do it out in public. We're going to get a pair of tickets to give away.
Yeah.
We're going to do that next week.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, we're going to do that, but that's still a go, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. And if it isn't, you can tell me.
And for whoever wins, I'll buy their first drink. How about that?
Wow.
It's a whole $6 I'll be spending on you.
At 6 o'clock in the morning. That'll be great.
Yes.
So once again, it's going to be on March 22nd at
the Winter Street Center.
Winter Street Center,
880 Washington.
Nice venue.
Tom Pagnotti.
Venue.
He's going to be hosting So You Think You Know Bath, the 7th edition. It's a local game show about living in, loving Bath, and it's March 22nd. What time is it, Tom?
It starts at 6 o'clock, and 6:30 the game actually starts. And if you don't mind, let me give a shout out to the sponsors this year: the Bath Holiday Inn, Cross Insurance, First Federal Savings Bank, and Wilson's Drugstore. It's funny that Wilson's Drugstore always happens to be in the championship round. They've sponsored that for 7 years now. And the only reason I can figure is this, because at that point the contestants really could use an aspirin. So,
Wilson's Drugstore, of course, first and foremost justifies its substantial existence by filling the numerous prescriptions that they do, but they are also tops on my list for their marketing of the T-shirt that says, and I got to spit this out just right, you probably know it, Bath, a small drinking town with a big fishing problem. That's a classic. I owned that T-shirt within 3 or 4 days of moving into Bath.
Yeah, the folks at Wilson's are great, as are all the merchants up and down Front Street. And, of course, Main Street Bath is all about making sure that they're promoted. And
Jennifer Geiger, who was here earlier this week, who, by the way, is a big fan of your hosting job on this show.
Well, Well, thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, she was here earlier this week, and will be back again, as I trust you will be. I just want to say, we established earlier, I've known Tom for over 30 years. I'm still trying to figure out how you are on the calendar several years my junior, but I'm still trying to figure out how I get old and you don't. And I'm very upset about that.
There's a painting of me in my basement.
He's got this Dorian Gray thing going on. He definitely made a pact with somebody to get that voice.
It's funny. That's why I didn't continue in television. At one point, I had a director say to me, you could use some work.
Ooh.
I'm like, really? Really?
By the way, that's something we did not mention while Tom was in Buffalo, and I often used to watch it. And Tom did this radio show in the middle of the day and hosted a movie. And
yes, that was the 8 o'clock movie.
8 o'clock movie on Channel 29 in Buffalo. And there used to be a lot of movie hosts around. I mean, there were movie hosts like there were disc jockeys.
Yeah, that was pretty popular.
Not too many anymore. You were one of the last.
Yeah, and a funny story about this, Buffalo's proximity to Canada. Well, as it happens, this television show had better ratings in Canada than it did in the United States. So my mom was in town. We went up to the Falls and then further up to Toronto. And I kept getting stopped on the street by people saying, hey, I watch the show every night. So my mother said nothing to me, but went home and told friends that I was an international star.
Well, and technically correct.
All right. We've been talking with Tom Pagnotti. He's the host of So You Think You Know Bath, his 7th edition. It's going to be on March the 22nd, 6 o'clock. It's going to be at the Winter Street Center in Bath, and it's all going to benefit Main Street Bath. For more information, jump on the website at www.visitbath.com. Tom, you've got to come back in and do this.
Absolutely.
Anytime. And the three of us have got to do this over lunch. Jim's buying. Thanks for coming in, Tom.
All right.